Alright, another week, another animal. Today we are discussing the Baird's Tapir. And this is episode number 21, otherwise in English 21. Now, what we're going to be doing for the exhibit is we are actually going to be making somewhat of a ravine with a stone centerpiece that will be connected to the far wall, making an archway that will be used as the hard shelter for our animal. Now, the Baird's Tapir is native to South Central America. This species specifically is almost entirely in Central America, reaching from the southern portions of Mexico to the northern sections of Colombia. Now, the tapir in itself is a very strange-looking creature, as we all know. It looks something like a mix between a pig, a hippo, and an elephant in some senses. And that is for one very important reason, is it is certainly a creature from a bygone age. Many animals of the Ice Age had a similar layout, at least when it comes to the pseudo-trunk and stout body, and tapirs are no different. Now, tapirs are one of the few animals that we still have around from the Miocene epoch. They are known to have evolved around 15 million years ago, give or take, in what is today Europe. And as time went on, they eventually crossed across Asia, through Russia, and over the Bering Land Bridge, eventually making home in North America, and as we know them all today, made their way down to South Central America, where the Baird's tapir specifically deviated roughly 5 million years ago from the general species. Now, the name Baird, which actually comes from an American naturalist known as Spencer Fullerton Baird, who observed the animal in Mexico in 1843. However, he was not the first to observe the animal. That would go to W.T. White, who unfortunately I could find no information on, because every time I tried to look up this man, all that came up was high school in Dallas, Texas. So, that naturalist, if you know anything about him, feel free to let me know, because I would like to see what else he's done in his time. As we move forward, working on our ravine, making it more applicable to the animal in question, let's discuss a little bit about the many, many names that the animal has. It pretty much has its own name in every single country that they can be found in. First off, going from north to south, we have the anteboro, which is the term used by the people of Veracruz and Oaxaca, and essentially in Spanish it translates to the before donkey or the pre-donkey. In Belize, it is known as the mountain cow, and the reason it doesn't have a Spanish name is because, believe it or not, Belize is the outlier of Central America in that they speak English, because the British had control over it and not the Spanish. And that is a very fitting name, by the way, seems how, yeah, I see it. They live in the mountains, and they are rotund and large, like a cow. However, on the exact other side of that coin, we have the most incomprehensible name that I have ever seen. And not by the name itself, but by what it translates to. And in places like Panama and Colombia, they are known as Macho de Monte, which means man of the mountain. Greater Colombia, what the hell are you smoking? This is not what a man looks like. As a matter of fact, I could not imagine something that looks less like a man. But I digress. And in general, tapirs are known as donda in Spanish, and they also have many, many names for the different Maya and Olmec-based languages that the natives still speak. However, I cannot pronounce any of them. Dear God, and I don't know how to pronounce it. So we're just gonna move along, because I feel like it would be much more respectful to not even try than to butcher it the way I will in my Anglo accent. So, before we move along in the actual animal's biology and history, let's discuss what we are working on at the moment. So, for those of you who don't know, ravines are not naturally forming by just land itself. Most of the time, they would be created by water, so we are going to make that waterway and put a one-way glass on the closer end so that we can get a good look at the animal and still have that nice bit of privacy that all the animals are going to need. And a little bit of advice for those of you who want to make a similar sort of exhibit, I highly recommend you set up the layout first, because I had a big issue with making this work when I had to add the door, seeing how I had to completely readjust the fence, because as you can see, I had to go over and back down, and it did not like that at all. Alright, enough waffling on about the exhibit. Let's get back to the animal, shall we? So the tapir is the largest native mammal of South Central America, and the Baird's tapir is actually the second largest, only being beaten out by the lowland tapir, which I honestly think they should have added to the game instead of the Baird's, because it has a really neat design, having a mane that sort of goes down the back of the neck and down the spine, just similar to that of a horse. But we have the Baird's, so you can't complain too much. So how large is the Baird's tapir? Well, I'm glad you asked. Roughly they can get to 330 to 660 pounds on average, and when at full size are pretty much completely impervious to most predators, the only exception being large jaguars and the American crocodile. Now, of course, when I say most, I don't include people, because due to overhunting, habitat population, and a whole bunch of other factors that I'm sure we've said time and time again about many of these animals, there are less than 5,500 left in the wild. However, unlike a lot of the animals, one of the big issues that the Baird's tapir has going for it is the fact that it is the victim of many car crashes across their native range. Now, I can only imagine how bad hitting a tapir must be, seeing how when you compare it to something like a deer, which can be about 150 pounds, that could already total your car and end your life. I could only imagine hitting a brick of meat that weighs 600 pounds, a quarter-ton animal, getting rammed into at 60 miles an hour probably doesn't just destroy your car, but probably destroys the car behind you. However, unlike deer, if you see one, you probably don't have to worry about an entire herd, seeing how they are primarily a solitary creature that are known to not have exclusive ranges. So they kind of just go wherever they please and do not want to mess with anyone, even each other. Now, what if one of his buddies wants to call him up, take him down to the watering hole, and have a nice drink after a long day's work? Well, I'm glad you asked. You were very inquisitive today. They actually communicate in a way you really would not expect. You look at an animal like a tapir. It's big, it's fat, you think it's going to have grunts and groans like a pig or a cow. No, they actually whistle. As a matter of fact, they are completely incapable of making those deep groans and grunts, because they can only make sounds that are akin to a whistle, a squeak, and essentially horrible flute playing. Which, as a mostly nocturnal animal, I could only imagine just how strange that would be if all of a sudden the sun starts to set and all you hear are the sounds of the world's worst flute player and a squeaky toy trying to find its way through the brush. Now, just because they are generally solitary, that doesn't mean they aren't occasionally seen in groups. And, as per many animals, they have their own name for a group of tapir, and it is a candle. Yeah, like the wax thing that you burn so your house smells nice. Yeah, apparently a group of tapir are called a candle, which I don't know where that wick came from, but so be it. Now, let's get into the morphology of our specimen today, and let's start with the big outlier that everyone may be wondering about. That very strange, almost prehensile trunk that is connected directly to its upper lip and makes it look like an absolute muppet when it's trying to show its teeth. Well, that is actually to aid in its ability to swim and its keen act of sniffing out different foods. As a completely herbivorous animal, there are some foods that they will actively hunt out in an attempt to get the nutrients that they may be missing, or something that is just rich in nutrients so that they can eat less and stay alive more. Now, the rest of the animal isn't too much to speak about, seeing how it kind of follows the basic game plan of any large animal. Round body, short legs, keeping itself camouflaged in the brush with the dark pattern. However, it is important to note that the tapir is one of only 3 Perissodactyla, which means odd-toed ungulates, meaning that this animal's closest relatives and all the people that it loves to hang out with at the family barbecue are horses and rhinoceros, which you can kind of see, sort of, a little bit, if you squint real hard. Especially the lowland, like I said earlier, has that mane like a horse, its body kind of looks like a rhino, but in all reality, it's definitely that one cousin that you see and you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot we were related. That's pretty much our species here. Now, what is this pot-bellied ungulate's relation with the nations of the world? Well, quite simply, as something of a very majestic creature, or at least exotic, it is actually the national animal of Belize, and due to the overhunting nature of the animal's existence for its hide, meat, etc., since time immemorial, in the modern era, it is actually illegal to hunt the Baird's tapir in Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, Costa Rica, and Panama. We're at the point where the exhibit is going to be more along our talking points, and right here is where I'm going to sort of give you a little bit of pointers to making your exhibit both easy to view and still looking full. To add a waterfall for the source for our little creek that'll eventually lead into the pond in the very far side of the exhibit. Due to the South and Central American theme that we have going on with the tapir, I do like to use the muddy water for both the waterfall itself and the Amazon color scheme for the water, and we are going to add that first and foremost, and I think it gives it a lot more of a fitting design for an exhibit like this. Now, with water, you're also going to want to add some lily pads or some rocks if it's an animal that prefers a stonier environment, but I like to go with lily pads for whatever environment I've got. That way it fills out the water aspect of it. And for the Baird's tapir, you're definitely going to want a decent amount of water because they are considered a semi-aquatic animal and are going to need that little bit of swimming room. Now, on top of that, I do like to keep food and water in out-of-sight places. If it's an herbivore, I would put it behind either some stone or even in a bush if I can, and use the existing foliage to make it appear like the animal is grazing naturally. We are also going to add the bedding and some of the entertainment for the animal so that we can properly keep its happiness up as we always want when it comes to our exhibits. And I do believe, other than making some room here, I'm going to remove some of the stones so that the animal itself can actually get some more walking space, because we're going to be cutting it short, or we're going to be cutting it close. It's also important to note that if you want to have something like a foraging exhibit, you are going to have to add that extra bit of room so that the animal can walk. It will take up a decent amount of space, so if you want a smaller exhibit, or if you're kind of constrained in the franchise mode, I would definitely recommend staying away from foraging area so that you can better manage the space you have available to you. Alright, and let's get our animals into the exhibit and see how they like it. As you can see, I had completely forgotten to add the terrain, but I do also think it is smart to kind of wait till you actually have the animal to get a better idea of how much of any certain thing they need. While it is information you can find, it is sort of difficult to kind of eyeball it. I certainly would recommend holding off on that, and as per usual, we are going to put the stone around the outside where the stone cliff faces are, and we're going to be adding the dense soil in where all the water will meet, similar to in reality where really grass isn't going to grow, where water is constantly moving through. So here we are, here's our exhibit, and here we go. Everything is set up. They are certainly a little bit cramped, but it is enough for their happiness to staying up to the highest degree, and we have everything that they need, both food, fun, and foliage. So thank you for watching. if you would be so kind as to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And more importantly, if you would be so kind as to go outside and actually enjoy nature rather than staying inside in the stuffy house all day long, so that you yourself can enjoy what this world has to offer. Other than that, I appreciate you coming by, and I will see you next week for the Royal Bengal Tiger. Alright, thank you, goodbye.